someone had told me at the beginning of my football season with Mount Barker Football Club that I would now be training with South Adelaide, there is no way I would have believed them. As a Waldorf student, the Year 12 project is something that we've always talked about from a very young age. I remember being in primary school and even then talking with my siblings about what we'd do for ours. When the time actually came around at the end of last year, I had no idea what I was going to do despite all my childhood ideas. It was suggested to us to write a list of 100 ideas. I think I came up with about 13. From becoming a personal trainer, doing a full drive trip to MMA fighting. All these ideas were great, but for some reason I still wasn't 100% set on any of them. I knew I needed something I was obsessed with, so I would remain inspired throughout the whole year. I couldn't think of anything until I went on a run with my older brother when he was visiting over the Christmas break. I'm not sure why I thought this was a good idea, seeing as he was so much fitter than I am. We had run halfway and I had tried keeping up with him, but I couldn't anymore. He ran ahead, then after a bit turned around and we ended up walking. While walking, we were talking about how I wanted to become a better football player and the things I needed to do to achieve this. One of them obviously being my fitness. We had also been talking about what I should do for my Year 12 project. My brother Malachi turned to me and said, "Why don't you just do that for your project? How can I develop as a player?" I immediately thought this would be the perfect idea, and I got excited about it straight away. I thought this would be the perfect project as I knew I wouldn't lose interest because I already knew how much I love it and how passionate I am about it. We also thought I could intertwine my community aspect because we both agreed that coaching the sport you play helps you develop as a player. Finally having an idea was the biggest relief. As Year 12 started, so did my football season. At the start, I was very focused on coaching, as I thought I could make that the main point for my project. But as the weeks went on, I wasn't really liking how my project was going, and I hadn't been able to coach a team as that would come in the later terms. I felt as if I was starting to fall behind in my project, and I was afraid I wouldn't have a project I was proud of. After football training one night, I gave Mally a call for a chat. I started to tell him about my concerns about my project and the lack of coaching I had been doing. "Giles, but what are you doing yourself to become a better player?" he asked. "That's all your project has to be." I thought about it for a second and realised he was right. I wasn't sure why I had started to fixate on coaching so much. Yes, that was my community aspect, but it didn't have to be my whole project. After this call, I felt a sense of relief and excitement. I brainstormed rethinking about all the things I needed to do to develop as a football player. The things I came up with were better my football skills, all of them. Kicking, marking, ground balls, and tackling. I needed to also become fitter and stronger. I felt because I was quite new to football, my football IQ also needed some development. For some context, I started playing football when I was 17. My dad wanted me to be doing something other than school to have an outlet. I immediately fell in love and have been obsessed over it since. I was working on all of this at weekly football trainings, at Mount Barker Football Club, and at the gym. But I still didn't feel like it was enough. I had felt like I had plateaued in my development. This is when I discovered a gym down at Christie's Beach called Limitless, where they do one-on-one sessions to help develop athletes. I decided the best thing to do to help me get past this development block was to start going and working with a personal trainer, Ben Yoemans, who specialises in AFL development and is a sample coach. When I first started going, we focused on my fitness and strength, seeing as I was already halfway through my season and wanted to be prepared for finals. Then after the season, when I thought I'd try out for a sample team, we started focusing on my skills as well. During this time, Ben has been teaching me all the correct ways to kick, mark, and pick up ground balls. We would start kicking to each other, then we'd move to the fence, and I would kick while he adjusted my technique. With marking, he would kick all different heights and speeds, and I would mark, him continuously giving me feedback. We would spend half the session outside doing skills, and the other half strength training or conditioning. During my strength training, we focused on lots of different muscles. For example, we focused on quad control exercises. This is so important, especially as a female athlete, because females have a disadvantage due to their physiological build, which increases instability, creating a chance of injury. Due to their physiological build, women were designed to give birth. The wider female pelvis alters the mechanics of how the thigh bone, tibia, and femur operate. This puts extra strain on the soft tissues that support your joints. We also have been doing work on my mobility, because to work on flexibility and mobility is the fluidity of the movement. If I'm limited in my mobility, it limits the things I can do, the ability to jump and be agile on the field. We did things like a set of really heavy weights and fast reps, doing quarter squats. Then after 5, I would immediately go into box jumps. I would then repeat this a couple of times because strength and speed equal power. Doing this, we activate neuro pathways, essentially brain to the muscle. Doing this in the gym will help me out on the field when running, jumping, and changing directions. This stimulates the positions when we move. During conditioning, I would either do several sets of sprints, a circuit consisting of different exercises, or Ben would set a certain number of calories to burn on the erg bike and an amount of time it needed to be done in. This kind of conditioning helps me during football games by enhancing my overall game, especially towards the end. Before going to Limitless, I felt like I had nothing to show for my project. But after not even 6 months, I have learnt so much, and I don't think I would have developed nearly as much if I hadn't started going. I found a significant part of my development came from coaching. Thanks to Daniel and Nick, at the end of term 2 and 3, I was able to help coach the 7-9 girls Crows Cup team, the 7-9 girls knockout team, and the 7-9 boys Crows Cup team. My project was finally starting to feel like it was coming along. I was able to run multiple trainings before the games where we went through different drills and nailed down on techniques, like kicking, marking, handballing, and tackling. The girls sadly lost every game, but considering none of them had ever played football before, it was a great effort, and being able to see their development from their skills and confidence between the Crows Cup and knockout was very impressive. For example, the girls held back quite a bit in the first games with their tackling, but by the last, they were smashing them. We weren't able to do a knockout football team for the boys, but we were able to play in the Crows Cup. We ended up finishing the day winning the Div 2 Crows Cup plaque after winning all their games, which I think is one of the first times Waldorf has won a sporting event. I was lucky enough to also help out with the Mount Barker Football Club Auskick program. It was so great being out there teaching such young kids and watching the joy on their faces after they achieved one of their skills. Like my brother and I had predicted, I found the coaching process very beneficial for my own skill development and football IQ. I found because I had to go over the skills in such detail, it got me going over them and really drilling it into my brain. Watching and analysing players continuously throughout every game, you're able to pick up on things and go, oh, if she leads this way, or if she had done that, which then I can bring into my own game. I also found when I coached and had a game the next day, I was more confident and played what I think were my best games. This definitely could be all coincidence, but I like to think not. When coaching, you have to be confident, or at least act it, or else the athletes won't feel confident in themselves or your coaching abilities. So I found that the day after their game, when I had mine, I just kept that same attitude. At first, I went once a week to Limitless to work on my strength and fitness. As the weeks went on, my football season came to an end with Mount Barker Football Club. I had an exit meeting with my head coach and the club president. During this meeting, we talked about all the things I did well during the season and what I also needed to work on through the off-season. At the end of the meeting, the president asked me what my football goals were. I told them that I'd love to play sample football in the next few years. They both told me that I could be doing that a lot sooner than a couple of years, and my coach said he'd find out about trials coming up. Leaving this meeting, I was so excited and shocked about what they'd said. My hard work was starting to pay off. I honestly thought it would be 2 or 3 years before I was considered for a sample team. After that meeting, I knew I had to up my training just in case because I wanted to be prepared as possible. I started going to Limitless twice a week working on strength and fitness, strength and skills, and also running in my own time. A few weeks later, I got a phone call from the West Adelaide's Women's Operation and Program Manager inviting me down to start pre-season with them. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited, but also extremely nervous and freaked out. The weeks went on, trying to train as much as possible and also stay on top of all my schoolwork, which ended up being quite difficult at times. I remember a teacher telling us around this time, saying that the next 5 weeks, all of us students just needed to focus on school and get it all done, seeing as this would be the hardest part of Year 12. I remember going, well, damn, that won't be happening. Pre-season starts. I went down to train with the Westies girls for the first time in September. The day of, I don't think I really ate, I was so nervous. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was during thesis week, and that day I remember so well because I barely got any thesis done as I couldn't focus. I ended up going down to Limitless that same day to train and go over my skills. I found this helped with my nerves quite a bit, and as I left, I felt more confident in myself. Don't get me wrong, I was still really nervous, but less. I arrived at training over 15 minutes early as I was terrified of being late, but then had to sit and wait, nervous as hell, until I saw other girls walking onto the oval. I then went and met a lot of the girls and coaches who were lovely and very welcoming. We started with a warm-up, went into skills, then conditioning, finishing with a weight session in the gym. On the drive home, I reflected on the training and was very happy with my performance, which isn't a regular thing. I went again the following week and we did a similar training. To my utter shock, a week later, I was put in contact with the South Adelaide's women's head coach. During this phone call with him, he asked me if I'd like to start pre-season with them. I couldn't believe it. The fact that I now had been invited to pre-season by 2 teams was such a shock to me. I honestly thought I would maybe try out for a team and get asked to come back next year. I was now very conflicted. I had to decide between the 2 teams. As soon as I got the invite from South, I knew I wanted to play for them, but there were pros and cons to both. Some of them being, I had already met a lot of the girls from Westies and gotten to know them. But then it was also an hour and a half drive, once you add traffic to that. South Adelaide played in the grand final last year. West Adelaide finished bottom. I ended up going out to the South Girls Info Night, where I met some of the girls and coaches and listened as they talked about the last season, the season coming, and their team. Immediately, I could tell South was a much better team. I felt like they had higher standards and the girls just seemed more committed. I then went to their first training of the season, which they call kick builders. We first had a kick and a catch and then went into a warm-up. After that, we went into skills. Here is where I also noticed how different the skills we were doing here compared to at Westies. At Westies, the coach got us to do things like kick and handball it to ourselves, and then went and kicked it to each other. At South, it was a lot more in-depth instructions on how to do everything correctly. After about an hour of skills, we headed into conditioning. The first thought after training was that I was definitely picking them, which I was already 80% sure, but now I was 100%. I knew at South I would learn the most and develop as a player, which was my goal. Throughout this year, I have learnt so much, from what I've learnt about myself to the things I learnt in the gym and on the football field. Towards the start of my season with Mount Barker Football Club, I had some thoughts on changing clubs, but at the time, the thought of having to meet a whole new team was too daunting. But fast forward to now, I have met and trained with 2 new teams, which yes, it was still daunting, but I was able to push myself to do it unlike the beginning of year. Putting myself out there so much was horrifying, but it always led to something good. Also, having to make big decisions was challenging for me, as I was always concerned about making the wrong one. Deciding between Westies and South was quite hard, because I had no idea what the right choice was. I didn't want to disappoint anyone, but I went with what I wanted instead of worrying about what others thought, which in the past I have been the worst at making decisions based on what others want. I was so determined to become a better player, I found myself becoming very disciplined. If I had planned or said I was going to do something that was going to help me become fitter, stronger, or better my skills, I would basically do it no matter what. The reason I was able to stay so disciplined because the end goal was so important to me. And since I was very young, discipline and commitment have been a big part of my family's values. Going to weekly trainings even when we didn't feel like it, and showing up to things when we say we would, despite how we felt on that day. At the beginning of the year, my goal was to develop as a football player, and I feel like I have. I think the evidence for this was the invites to pre-season from Westies and South, but also how I felt. I found myself less nervous before games, more confident during games, and felt like I was impacting the game more. I think regardless to this project, I would have worked hard to get better. But I feel like because I wanted to be proud of this project and show I have developed, I was more motivated to keep going. I didn't want to get up here and be like, this is how I developed as a player, but not actually feel or believe I had. I now have until December to prove myself a spot on the South Adelaide women's team, which is going to be challenging, but I'm excited to try my hardest and put my absolute all into it. No matter what happens, and no matter how long I am with South, I am so grateful I have been given this opportunity to train with them and learn from some of the best coaches and other players. Don't be daunted by your goals. I have learnt that development and success come from chasing after them. Yes, it's hard work. Everything that you hope for is in the hard work, and you have to make a choice what sort of person you want to be and what kind of life you want to live. Give yourself opportunities to reach your full potential or shy away from it. Waking up every day and choosing to be disciplined, doing the hard work when you don't feel like it, ignoring the voices of judgment and negative criticism inside your head and from those around you, doing it anyway. That's where you find what you are capable of. Thank you. questions? Yes, Daniel.
Abby, congratulations on your speech. It was really interesting to be a part of that and see the improvements that you made. So well done. My question is, did you find it to be a big difference between West Adelaide and South Adelaide in like how your nervousness and your confidence going into your first session at each club?
Yeah, I found for West Adelaide, I was a lot more nervous than South. I think mainly because I had no idea what a sample team training would look like and how I would go with my skills and fitness level. And then going into South, I knew one of the coaches, so I kind of knew their, like, I don't know, his coaching style and what the girls were like from the info night. So I felt a lot more confident going into the South training because I had seen from Westies what they were like.
Well done.
Thank you.
I was wondering whether now you have proven to yourself that you can set goals and meet them, has your belief that you can play for a Sandfield team or your self-talk about knowing that that is going to be your future changed?
Yeah, I think, wait, sorry, can you, like,
I'll try and rephrase it. I'm wondering whether now that you know you can set a goal for yourself and achieve it, has the idea of playing for a Sandfield team as something that you were aspiring to do, is that something that you now believe you will be able to do?
yes, I think I will be able to. I'm not sure if it will be this season. I hope it is. But I think, yes, that will definitely be something that I'll do in my future.
Thank you, Jardel. I'm wondering, with the increase in women playing AFL, we've also seen a bit of a prevalence of ACL injuries. I'm wondering whether you know what coaches and trainers are doing to prevent that.
Well, from what I've learnt from my mentor, Ben, who is one of the South coaches and a personal trainer, he's trying to get more girls into weightlifting and strengthening all the muscles. Yeah, I think that's mainly, and teaching girls how to correctly do things. Because we've started, well, most of us have started at a later age, so we do things incorrectly. So yeah.
I was along the same sort of line. What an exciting time to be joining professional women's sport, particularly around the success of the World Cup. I think has kind of brought women's sport further, which is really exciting. Which means there's more money flowing and sponsorships and all that sort of exciting stuff. But I did hear a stat that there was about 30 players that couldn't play in the World Cup because of ACL injury. I've sat at the back of rooms, done sound for lots of events, and one of those was around physiotherapists and talking about ACL damage particularly, which doesn't make me an expert, but just that I heard some things. And one of the things that a lot of studies are coming about is around hormonal changes and different patterns at different times of the month, all of that, for particularly for women professional players. Have you explored, obviously it's personal, but I just mean, is that something that is spoken about, or is it something that you're aware of for kind of longevity in this? And congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so at South, they're quite, they tell us all about that and we're quite informative of that. And the coaches are very supportive of that, and they don't want us, during, like you said, like during the month, different cycles, there's some parts that it's more, you're you're more prone to injuries, I think with like the soft tissue. So they don't want us doing like the hard sprinting and stuff like that. So yeah, I think, yeah.
Thank you, Jardel. Is there a sport athlete or a sports person other than the Blues that you look up to, you emulate, you think, oh, they epitomise the values of your family and yourself?
Oh, I haven't really thought about that before because it's always only Blues players. Um, um, I can't really. I really like Anne Hatchard. She plays for the Crows. I've been able to meet and talk with her a couple of times. Really good player, really nice lady. Yeah, she's probably look up to her. Yeah. Yeah.
As a PE teacher, there's a pretty strong trend of girls who sort of lose interest or connection to sport at around the sort of 12, 13, 14-year-old mark. And you're saying that a lot of the girls at South particularly have found sport a lot later. What would you have any advice or like a message to send out to girls at that age surrounding their involvement in sport?
Well, I think a lot of it comes from insecurities. I think a lot of the girls are insecure in themselves and find it hard to put themselves out there in sport because they're scared of what others are going to say, or at school. I've heard like some girls don't want to go down there. Like the boys, I hate the boys, sorry. So yeah, I think, yeah, just get out of your comfort zone, try hard, and just turn it into fun instead of like worrying about what others think. Like, yeah, that's all. Is that- have some thank yous. First, I'd like to thank everyone here for coming and supporting us all. Kathy, thank you for volunteering your own time during thesis week and sitting and helping myself and David. It was very much appreciated. Thanks, Nick. Whenever I had questions about my project or football, you were always here and you were always there and had answers and suggestions for me. Aaron, thank you for being our guardian for the last couple of years. I'm sure it was quite challenging at times. To my class, it's been a long 14 years for a lot of us. I'm so glad it's over, but we've had some fabulous times and some challenging ones, but I'm glad it was with you guys. Rose and Eleanor, thank you for making this whole thing possible. Daniel, thank you for being my supervisor and helping me go through all my project ideas and giving suggestions when needed. Thank you for helping me develop my coaching skills and let me take leadership during trainings and games. Thank you, Ben, for teaching me everything I now know about football and fitness. Thank you for helping me write my thesis and for helping me plan and go through everything for Showcase. I can't imagine my project without your help. To my family, thank you for everything you've done for me. Thank you for everything you've always done for me and for putting up with the stressed version of me for this last year. Hopefully that's over. To my siblings, you guys are my best mates and I love you so much. To my parents, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've always done for me. I'm so grateful for you guys, and thanks for letting me skip school and train.